Hello and welcome back to our news bulletin, coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Salia Strzemska. And we start with the latest update from the Vatican following the passing of Pope Francis on Monday morning. The Vatican has announced the Pope's funeral will take place this Saturday, April 26th at 10 a.m. local time. The passing of Pope Francis has initiated a mourning period in the Vatican and marks the beginning of an ancient tradition to select a new pontiff. The leader of the Roman Catholic Church died Monday morning at his residence in the Vatican's Casa Santa Marta at the age of 88. The Vatican has released a photo of Pope Francis in his open coffin, dressed in a red robe with the papal mitre on his head and a rosary in his hand. The image was taken in the chapel of Casa Santa Marta, Francis's residence at the Vatican. News of the Pope's passing came unexpectedly, as he was present at Easter celebrations over the weekend. Just one day before his death, Pope Francis dedicated his Easter message and annual Urbi et Orbi blessing to world peace, global disarmament, and the release of prisoners in Gaza. However, in his final months, Francis's health was in a severe decline. He was hospitalized for 5 weeks from February 14th for double pneumonia, which became the most serious health crisis of his 12-year papacy. The Catholic Church released the death certificate Monday evening, detailing the cause of death of Pope Francis. A Vatican physician determined the Pope died from a stroke, resulting in irreversible cardiovascular collapse. Pope Francis left behind a last will and testament detailing his burial wishes. Written in 2022, the document reflects his commitment to simplicity and humility. The Pope requested to be laid to rest in the Papal Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome. This choice departs from tradition, as popes are typically buried in St. Peter's Basilica.
In the will, Pope Francis asked for his tomb to be located between the Pauline Chapel and the Sforza Chapel in the Basilica, with no other title but his papal name, Franciscus, inscribed on it. The tomb should be simple without any decorations. He also expressed gratitude for the prayers of those who have supported him, adding that the suffering in his final years was offered to the Lord for peace and brotherhood among nations.
The world continues to mourn the loss of Pope Francis, who passed away on Monday. His image is prominently featured on front pages of numerous newspapers throughout Europe today.
The obituaries in multiple media outlets underline the late pontiff's progressive or even revolutionary agenda. The English Times called Pope Francis an outsider with a mission to change the Catholic Church. The French outlet La Croix labeled him a reformer, and in Spain's El País, he's referred to as the Pope who shook everything. He is also remembered for his humility and the focus he put on the world's most vulnerable, granting him the title of the People's Pope.
Pope Francis will be remembered as a humble servant, a tireless advocate for immigrants and the impoverished, and a passionate voice for those in need. His calls for social justice, critique of unchecked capitalism, and urgent pleas for climate action showed his commitment to creating a better world, not only for the Catholics. Here's a report on the extraordinary 12 years of his papacy.
From the moment he became Pope in 2013, Pope Francis's pontificate has been shaped by a clear and enduring message: peace.
May the sound of arms be silenced in war-torn Ukraine. May there be the boldness needed to open the door to negotiation and to gestures of dialogue and meeting in order to achieve a just and lasting peace. May the sound of arms be silenced in the Middle East.
One of his most symbolic gestures and a particularly striking moment of his pontificate was in April 2019, when he knelt to kiss the feet of South Sudanese leaders at the head of a country grappling with a horrific civil war.
I think that today in the world, this is the greatest plague, the sale of weapons.
Francis left a global mark with his message of peace, but also interreligious dialogue, most powerfully embodied by his historic 2021 visit to war-torn Iraq. This was the first ever papal visit to the country, where he held a symbolic meeting with Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, the spiritual leader of millions of Shia Muslims.
Iraq will always remain with me in my heart. I ask all of you, dear brothers and sisters, to work together in unity for a future of peace and prosperity.
Through various channels and rhetorics, Francis upheld the notion of mercy for one another.
People with homosexual tendencies are children of God.
He was a man who cared about the renewal of the Catholic Church. He cared about emphasizing mercy, which other popes also taught, but he seemed to have a special focus on this topic. He focused on the matter of the sick and the poor.
Despite stirring controversy, the Pope encouraged pastoral workers to welcome those who cohabit without marriage, as well as divorced and remarried individuals. And he sounded a global call to protect the planet.
Christian brothers and sisters, in the commitment to care for creation as a sacred gift of the Creator, let us stand with the victims of environmental and climate injustice.
During his 12 years, the pontiff made 47 trips outside of Italy, visiting more than 65 states and territories, clocking up more than 465,000 kilometers, and was prepared to travel more if his health had allowed it.
On the second day of the war, I went to the Russian embassy and said I was ready to go to Moscow to see Putin.
The pontiff kept working until the end. On Palm Sunday, he met U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. In his final Easter Urbi et Orbi, his annual global blessing, delivered just a day before his death, the Pope once again urged world leaders to lay down their arms and return to dialogue, thus concluding his pontificate of peace for peace. Reporting for TVP World, I'm Aisha Badja.
One of Pope Francis's defining characteristics was his deep humility, says Father Stanisław Tasiemski, Vice President of the Catholic Information Agency. He recently joined TVP World to share his memories of the late pontiff.
Surely he expressed in his first apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium. It means to show to the world that the gospel is joy, and that the task of every Christian is to accept the gospel and to take the gospel to the world, to be disciples, but also missionary disciples. It is one of the keys he used early, and even he was probably one of the reasons why he was a candidate at Conclave in 2013, was that he took a very active part in gathering of Latin American bishops in Aparecida in 2007. He was one of the editors of the final document, and it was here where he was very visible. So people, cardinals, bishops around the world noticed his presence and his energy, his proposal to reach especially the poor, those marginalized migrants.
We'll keep you updated on the latest from the Vatican. For now, however, let's move on to other news, starting with Ukraine. We are preparing meetings with partners that could bring us closer to a ceasefire, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said in his Monday evening address to the nation. The announcement of the talks comes amid intensified Russian hostilities following a 30-hour Easter truce.
On Wednesday, we will meet with partners from Europe, from the UK, France, Germany, as well as from the US. These meetings could bring us closer to a ceasefire and a real lasting peace. Now, after Easter, the whole world sees the real issue, the true reason why the fighting continues. It is Russia that is the source of the war. It is Moscow that must issue the real order to the Russian army to cease fire, and if such a harsh Russian order for silence is not given, there is no silence. Indeed, on Easter there were no air raid alarms, and some areas of the front saw silence. So it is possible when Russia decides to reduce the killing. But even on this Easter there were Russian assault operations, strikes and shelling, and there were casualties, including civilian losses.
For the first time since the early days of the full-scale invasion, Vladimir Putin has said that he is open to direct bilateral talks with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Speaking to a Russian public broadcaster, Putin indicated his country would welcome peace efforts and hopes Kyiv, quote, will feel the same way. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov clarified that the primary goal of the potential talks would be to put a stop to strikes on civilian targets. President Zelenskyy did not respond directly, but indicated that Ukraine is ready for a conversation in order to protect the lives of its citizens. In recent days, both sides have held separate talks with the US acting as an intermediary without any direct contact. Both countries have been warned by US President Donald Trump that he may abandon his role in the talks should no progress be made on peace negotiations.
The memory of the fallen is commemorated by...
And with this we conclude our news bulletin. Thank you for watching and have a good day.